around for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's a bilingual YouTuber sharing real talk on Japan cars culture and truth, no other than Mr. Steve Feldman.
Nice to meet you, Daniel. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you. Thank you for allowing me on your podcast, and congratulations on all your success. Very. I know the hard work that you had to put in to get to where you're at, so congratulations on that.
Likewise, Mr. Steve, congratulations for
Thank
sharing
you.
your videos to the world as well as your knowledge and wisdom.
Thank
From
you.
zero to Japan, how an American become a cultural bridge between two worlds.
I'd like to talk to you about that today. I think it's an interesting story that a lot of people can maybe learn from, take something from, and maybe benefit themselves from. And that's why I enjoy telling this story because I think it's quite unique. I'm 54 years old. I currently reside in Texas, Dallas, Texas area. I was born in New York. I was raised in New Jersey in 1970, and growing up, I was from a family that loved cars. And at that point in America, American cars, muscle cars, hot rods, chop tops, custom cars of all sorts. American cars were everything for me, for my family, for my dad. This is what I grew up around. And really had, and it was the 70s where, if people are old enough to remember, I know you're not old enough to remember this, but if you are old enough to remember, we had something called an oil shock back then. It was when gas prices went through the roof and where it became very expensive. And American cars were eating a lot of gas. They were gas guzzling, big, high displacement engines that were sucking up a lot of gas. And at that time, Japanese cars started coming to the United States, and they were not considered very good quality. They were not considered very good cars. Guys like me who were American guy cars wouldn't even really recognize that they even existed. But people started buying them because they were fuel efficient, they were inexpensive, and ultimately they were good cars. They didn't break down. And as much as bashing and as everything as they got at that time, they wound up proving to be very reliable, very good cars. I had no interest in them. I had no interest in anime. I had no interest in manga. I had no interest in games. That wasn't my thing. I like cars. I like American muscle cars, and that was it. But I wound up going to college as a business major at the University of Wisconsin in 1988. And when I got to college, in order to enter the business school, there were prerequisites for business school, and one of those classes was a class called comparative politics. And in the comparative politics class, they discussed the politics of countries like America and England, but also Japan and China. And when we got to the discussion of China, remember, this is 1980, not China, to Japan. And remember, this is 1988, meaning I'm putting this in the context because World War II ended just 40 years prior to this. Japan surrendered to the United States. The United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The war ended and Japan was destroyed. Japan was leveled. Yet this country, after just 40 years, which is not a lot of time when you really think about the overall, the totality of things, came back. And at the time in 1988, 1989, 1990, brands like Sony and Toyota and Nissan and Honda is the proper pronunciation, Honda as we call it, right? It became major brands in the United States. Our TV industry was gone. Zenith and Westinghouse and Magnavox, those brands that we had in the 70s were gone. Japan had taken over. In business school, going into business school, they were talking about how Japan does things like just-in-time management systems, meaning Japan is a small country. There's not a lot of space. We take space for granted, how big things are in the United States, but in Japan, it's very small. When you know a car is coming down the line that needs a set of black seats, those black seats need to arrive just in time because you can't have 400 different seats sitting there. You just don't have the space to, excuse me, I thought I silenced that, there to wait. So they created systems and group work ways that we never did work, that all of a sudden in business school in 1989 and 1990, they were starting to teach us about. And at the same time, that comparative politics class opened my eyes to a culture and to a society that was amazing to me. We have a little country in proportion to the United States. The land mass is very small. And amongst that landmass, developable space is even smaller. You have mountains, you have earthquakes, you have tidal waves, you have, a lot of geographic factors working against you. You don't have a lot of resources. You don't have oil, you don't have gas. Yet, and since you are a book site, and I think this is relevant to our discussion, Japan is number one by an author named, I believe his name was Clyde Preskowitz at the time, was a book that they talked about in a lot of classes. It was about this country with all these, so small, in the middle of Asia, where far, far away, that was becoming number one, and projected to be the number one economy in the world. Well, I was a business major. I wanted to make money. I wanted to develop business. I had no interest in Japan really at the time, but these things, and how a country so small can become so strong and rebuild after such a short time was something for me that was fascinating, and I wanted to know more. I decided to study the language and the business at the same time, and that became the launching path for everything that came after for me.
Congratulations, Mr. Steve, for sharing Japanese culture to the world.
Thank
How
you.
did your sense of self as American evolves as you integrated into Japan? Did you ever feel caught between identities, and how did you reconcile that?
Well, I'll tell you, upon graduating, or right before I graduated at the University of Wisconsin, I entered a nationwide contest called the Japanese Speech Language Contest, and it's a contest where you go in front of the embassy, actually in Chicago, and it's a contest that people studying Japanese or other Japanese people come to. And I did a speech about the previous summer. I went to Japan for the first time, and I was on a chicken farm in rural Japan
Mm.
during my summer for a homestay. And I went up in the chicken farm uniform and a chicken hat and a big boots, and I looked like a Japanese farmer, but I went as a white guy going on stage, and I told a funny story about my experience, and I won that contest, first place. And I got that was my job opportunity to go to Japan. I got hired, headhunted by at the time by some Japanese companies. There's a whole story behind that too, but I'll shorten to basically I wound up in Japan working for a Japanese company. So I'm a young New York guy in Japan at his new company, and I sit down and I I like to talk, as you probably have figured out already. I don't. You could probably not say another word for the next hour, and I could keep talking nonstop. But I like to talk, and when
Yes.
I was young, I liked to talk. But I quickly learned that it wasn't my place to talk. It wasn't my place to suggest things. It wasn't my place to raise my hand during a meeting and throw in my ideas. I was the low guy on the totem pole. I was the new guy in the place. Nobody asked for my opinions. Nobody was looking for my opinions. Nobody else was giving opinions, whether they're there for 10 years, 20 years, or anything else. One guy spoke, maybe somebody else spoke a little bit, but that was it. So, a very difficult thing about Japanese culture for American people. And it's become a lesson over the years for me that has become something very, even hard for me because I like to talk so much to control, is something that I coined the phrase for what this is. It's the 2-1 rule. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a specific reason. Listen double of what you're talking, and just shut up sometimes and just listen. You're not asked to say something, don't talk. And this is a very good rule and very hard, but it wasn't my place to talk. I thought contributing was important. No, that's not the way it's done in Japan. But the bigger lesson behind this is in negotiations, in dealing with people, sometimes you just shut up, don't say anything, or do what Japanese do.
Arigato.
Suck your teeth a little bit and look like that and watch what somebody else keeps saying, especially American people can't stop talking in a negotiation, other things. You learn that silence is a very, very strong hand to play in things, but it's very important. When you're not spoken to, don't speak. And if you're a young guy, nobody was looking for my opinion at that time in a Japanese company.
And most Japanese are disciplined enough. Looking back, Mr. Steve, what core aspect of the American mindset did you initially take for granted that caused the most friction in Japan?
Individuality, sticking out, wanting to be different than everybody else. They have an expression in Japan, is that the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So,
Yes.
you don't typically stick out in Japan, but there are people who do. They're not always loved or liked. And I think Japanese look at American culture, and one of the things that they admire about things in America is people's individuality. In Japan, when you go to school, you wear a uniform. Everybody wears the same uniform. You carry a backpack. It's maybe the color is slightly different, but everybody wears the same backpack. Everybody wears the same hat. Everybody, is it's a very, I always either say homogeneous or homogeneous. I don't know I think homogeneous is the proper pronunciation, but it's 99% Japanese people in a society that there's rules, specific rules about how things are done. The big difference between Americans and Japanese, when a manual comes with something, they read the manual. We don't, we throw the manual away and just start making so whatever it is. We don't follow the rules. Japanese follow
The
rules. There are
rules.
specific ways to do things, specific ways to conduct yourself, specific ways to talk, specific ways to comport yourself in situations that are societally accepted. And when you're outside of that norm, you're gonna get knocked back into place.
Totally agree with you, Mister. And the Japanese people are well disciplined. That's why they have a massive success in
Yeah,
their country.
correct.
Beyond language, Mr. Steve, what are the most subtle, unspoken cultural barriers?
Well, Japanese is a very difficult language in this, especially coming from English, I think, for many reasons. One, the grammatically, you're thinking in reverse. I like you is not I like you. You don't think in that grammatical structure. You think in a structure of I, you, like. So you're one, grammatically, everything is completely different. On top of that, what is very difficult is also cultural, is the levels of politeness and the societal structure differences and the way people look at those and talk about those. For instance, in Japan, there's an emperor. There are words and ways of wording things and ways of saying things that are reserved for the emperor, or people certainly of that class. But the emperor certainly has a completely different set of way. You don't disrespect the emperor. You don't talk bad about the emperor. You use very polite words if you spoke about the emperor, even as in the third person. But let's say you go to a meeting and you're the young guy there. I would be expected the people who are elders and certainly positioned in a company as a manager, as a president, as a CEO, or somebody like that, to speak to them in a manner, in a formal type of Japanese that's acceptable. It would not be acceptable to speak to them the way maybe me and you would speak, as we became friendlier and went out for a couple of beers or a glass of wine or tea together. So as an American, and then there's ways within the language too. This is also another way, and because you just can't learn the language and expect that that's enough there. You need to understand how to humble yourself, put yourself down, and elevate somebody else within the same language. Meaning, like, there's different ways to say things. I want to eat this food, okay,
Yeah.
that's sitting in front of me, or I'll allow you. Thank you for allowing me to eat this food. I mean, it's different how you position yourself and humbling yourself, and that's a whole mindset. So, learning the language alone in Japanese is not enough. You have to go further, and you have to really understand the culture and that way of thinking that is so different than ours. And that's a big challenge, but it's great. But so that's some language challenges. Then on top of that, the obvious kanji, learning characters, learning
Yes.
how to recognize and write. I say nowadays, the one piece of advice I would give to people is I don't think the actual art of writing is as important as it once was if you can read kanji properly. Because if you can read and phonetically pronounce them as you type them into your cell phone or anywhere else, as long as you can recognize them, they're going to come out once you type in, the phonetically. So writing is very tough because it's memorization. And in my days, over and over and over and over again, you had to write, and on the board and in your notebook. And I think it was part of the memorizing process and why I'm able to still read today. But that's a very big challenge to learning Japanese, especially as an English speaker.
What essential qualities like patience, curiosity, or humility does someone need to build genuine cultural bridges beyond just living abroad?
I think when you first of all, when you go abroad or you go to another country, whether it be Japan, wherever it may be, first of all, and this is another thing too, yeah, you have to, and for me too, I think it was a lesson that learned, and maybe at times it was, being proud of where you're from, there's no problem. Being proud of your culture and what it is not a problem. But remember, when you go to another country, you're a guest. And there are ways that things are done in those countries that may not be the way you do it. Certain cultures that may even something as simple as the way a bathroom is used, right? They may be different.
Yes.
It's not wrong. It's not right. It's different. We can laugh about differences. We can discuss differences. We can do that. But you don't want to be the guy who said, well, in America, we do it this way. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, because that's not being open-minded and accepting of the culture. And again, coming in and acting like, well, we're better than you are, doesn't get you good anywhere that you go, I think. So that's the first thing. So, be open-minded to accept things. And then there's so much you can learn from another culture, particularly from, in my case, from Japan, but I've traveled to many, many countries. And, there's ways that things are done. There's things, the way, greetings are made, the way customers are made to feel welcome, the way tea is part of a process of sitting down and talking to people, the way conversations are done, the way going out together at night is done, the way enjoying alcohol and spending time at night in clubs and doing, the way that bonds a relationship, the way you speak to people, the way you deal with people, the way you become trusted, the way business cards are dealt with, the way, I mean, there's just so much that I've learned in my time in Japan that I've been able to bring back to America and not change what's done in America. We have our special qualities too. There's nothing bad about what we do, but I
Yes.
think implementing some of a little bit of humbleness and certainly politeness and certainly the desire to satisfy and give customer service to people without the expectation of a tip, with a smile, with gratitude, is something that we can do here too. Is not impossible, and is something that I think is, maybe, I don't know, call me an old guy, an old fogey, somebody who, looked at things, but I think maybe we forgot some of these things that in Japan I see when I go there. My eyes open and say, God, I wish in some ways that things were, I wish people were a little politer. I guess I wish people working in fast food, even while they got a tip screen in your face, had the desire to try to be a little bit politer or nicer. You know, in Japan, you rarely get that side of things, and so it's motivated me in the businesses that I do. I own a Japanese cafe in Plano, Texas. We offer omotenashi. Omotenashi is Japanese hospitality. Means when you come in, you're welcome and greeted, like Japanese restaurants. Irashaimase. You always hear that.
Yes.
It's a big welcome to people to come in. I don't make my employees say irashaimase, but welcome to Hoshi. Good afternoon. How are you today? Being nice, being friendly, giving a great experience, and not demanding a tip in any way, but putting in their face, became a part of Japanese culture that I wanted to really implement here. And I think the customers really appreciate it and enjoy it and feel like, wow, okay, this is a different feeling in this cafe. It's very Japanese, if you will, but it's very nice and inviting.
Totally agree with you, Mr. Steve. And I associated with the German people, with the Japanese, with their self discipline. And Mr. Steve, as a YouTuber bilingual, what are your short term and long term goals?
I My short-term goals. Well, to continue to take my brand that I've developed on YouTube, and I think short term is part of why I'm speaking with you tonight, and was honored to be invited onto your podcast. Was a lot of people in the English speaking world don't know who Steve's POV is. A lot of people outside of Japan don't know who Steve's POV is. A lot of people do. I mean, I have a a good amount of very loyal fans in America and other
Yes.
countries as well. But I think I have a unique um, insight and skill set and knowledge of Japan and culture like this, and I'd like to share that with more people, and I hope that brings more business opportunities to me and to others, where maybe we can do things together, create opportunities. I'm a realtor. I have my cafe. I do other things, and I want to meet people, and I want people to know what I do, and get to know the channel, and maybe learn some of the things from the culture that I learned, and say, you know what, that's really cool. I'd like to do some of that. I do father son stuff on my channel. I have a great relationship with my son. We build cars together and do that. Many people have gotten motivated by watching that too, and wanted to get better relationships with their children. And so if I can have that kind of influence in the long term, and keep things going like that, and sharing cultures, and being somewhat of a, the Japanese say, kakehashi. Kakehashi is a bridge between two cultures. As I am, I guess I'll be a happy man in the future as well.
Very well said, Mr. Steve. Very well said. And good luck to your goals and looking forward for more success.
Thank you
And
so
what
much.
would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to put up their own YouTube as well as being entrepreneur?
For one, stop thinking and telling everybody around you that you're going to want to start a YouTube and do it. Just do it already. Because if you can't get over that first step, nothing's going to happen. So I've met so many people. Yeah, I'm going to make a YouTube channel. I'm going to do this. Just do it. Just do it already. Get over it. But this is one really important point of advice. Maybe you watch YouTube, you watch other people, you want to be like somebody on YouTube. Don't try to be like anybody else. Be yourself. Bring your unique perspective, bring your unique POV, your unique way of looking at things, presenting things to it. You don't try to be somebody else, because I think one of the things why YouTube is interesting is because you can smell the fake people and you can see the real people. And it's better to be real. Maybe you don't think you're interesting, but you know what? There are other people who really think you are. Go out there and do it. You have nothing to lose. It doesn't cost anything. You're going to learn something. And you know what? If you fail, guess what? I mean, that's okay, because life, you have to fail to succeed. I truly believe that. So there's nothing really is failure. If you trip up along the way, if it doesn't get as many views as you thought, keep going. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And sometimes, let me tell you this too, at least in the YouTube sense, sometimes the thing you spent the most time on that you think is going to get so many views is something that's not going to get viewed at all. Yet something that you thought was a pile of junk, was the worst interview, the worst video you ever created, put it out there once, because it may wind up being the best performing video of it is. And that may teach you something that is a very valuable lesson, again, about just the reality about something. And you don't need a lot to get started, by the way, too. One iPhone, Android, one Mac with iMovie. You don't even have to pay for anything beyond that. And some Photoshop, if not Be Funky or something else online, for a few dollars, you can start and just do it. But stop talking about it. Do it.
Do
Go
it.
do it.
Do it, people.
Do it.
When I'm starting my podcast, I use my iPhone 10 and $10 microphone. See, imagine, people, my podcast become bigger, bolder, and I have 154 countries listening to this podcast. So please, if you have the talent, please do share to the world, just like Mr. Steve POV. And thank you for your advice, Mr. Steve. Empowering indeed. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course, my book 101 review in its fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in its third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in first season.
Wow.
Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Steve, where do you see the greatest need or opportunity for a deeper US Japan cultural bridges in the next decade?
Respecting each other's differences, respecting each other's cultures, learning from each other, from both things, because there's plenty that both Japanese can learn from us and we can learn from them. And recognizing that our alliance, that we're both very free countries with good people, with good hearts, with good morals, with peaceful intentions, and that, we really, while we don't speak the same language, and we share different cultures, there's quite a bit that we have in common, with Japan, and there's lots and lots that we can do together, and lots we can learn from each other. And if I could be a little piece of that, over the next 10 years, 20 years, or however long I can, then I will feel very good about what I've done over my time on this planet.
A legacy indeed, Mr. Steve Feldman of POV. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy as well as your YouTube videos?
Yes, please. Steve's POV on YouTube. And my cafe is called Hoshi Japanese Cafe here in Plano, Texas. Please come by for authentic, delicious Japanese street foods and service. And I'm also a realtor in the state of in the state of Texas. Excuse me, in the state of Texas. If you're looking to come to Texas, as I did from California or wherever else, I would love the opportunity to help you share my experience in buying real estate and negotiating on behalf for you here as well. So check me out. Please reach out anytime. And thank you so much for this opportunity, Daniel.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Steve Feldman because if you support him, more and more and more empowering videos to come. So, Mr. Steve, arigato gozaimasu.
Arigatou gozaimashita.
More to come, people. See you soon.